that little gate thing, yeah.
The most universally recognized symbol of climbing is the rope. The rope represents adventure, undertaken with a realistic concern for safety. In the next 80 minutes, we'll look at a few of the ways a climbing rope can be used in partnership with other basic climbing tools to prevent or address some common safety-related climbing scenarios. We'll examine these tools at use in 3 rock climbing activities: sport climbing, traditional, and multi-pitch climbing with improvised rock rescue. We'll also take you to the colder side of things, applying the same safety tools to waterfall ice climbing, glacier travel, and crevasse rescue. The ultimate safety tool, of course, is your brain, without which all of the other tools are either useless or dangerous. So here are some recommendations for getting the most out of the material we've included in this video. The first time you watch Why Not, we recommend you view it all the way through. This will give you exposure to the specific tools and their varied applications. Once you know what's covered, pick out those sections you want to revisit in more detail. Get your gear together so you can actually set things up as you watch the demos. You can set up miniature versions of the bigger scale systems by using keychain type beaners, 3 or 4 millimeter accessory cord, and kids action figures. When using live bodies to practice these skills, make sure you set up a controlled environment and incorporate backups in case you make a mistake. Sport climbing. Today, most people begin rock climbing at an indoor climbing gym. Sport climbing is the outdoor equivalent of gym climbing. For those making the transition to the outdoor environment, there are many rewards, like the scenery, but some new challenges as well. Sport climbing's focus is on movement and technical difficulty, so systems are simple and equipment is kept to a minimum. Approaches are usually easy and short, with manicured areas at the base of the climbs. Protection and anchors are fixed, meaning quick draws and a rope are all you'll need to supplement your personal gear. In terms of safety, primary consideration should be given to route planning, solid belaying, effective communication, properly clipping the rope to protection,
Down.
and safe procedures for lowering off climbs. Before you start climbing, check the guidebook so you're clear on where the route goes, how many draws to take, what type of anchor you'll find, and how much rope will be required to lower off.
7 clips and 2 for the anchor, that's 9.
Mentally plan and rehearse your moves, especially the holds and body position necessary to clip protection.
Okay, got it.
It's crucial to properly clip the rope into the bolts on a sport climb. Improper clipping can result in the rope or draw unclipping itself and the leader clocking major airtime. Set your quick draws up so the gates on both the top and bottom beaners face the same direction. Remember, if you're using bent gate beaners, they always go on the rope end. Bent gate beaners are more prone to binding and torquing if used in bolt hangers, especially the old style hangers with small holes. Clipping pro safely takes forethought and technique. When clipping a draw into the bolt, make sure the beaner gates face away from you and your intended direction of travel. In this situation, the climber is traversing right, so the beaner gates are facing left. If you don't orient the beaners properly, you increase the chance of them being accidentally opened by either features on the rock, the bolt hanger, or the rope itself. See how, in this situation, the beaner gates are moved towards the rock and the bolt hanger. This orientation is weaker and easier to open than when the solid spine side of the carabiner is in the same position. The rope should come up the rock, through the beaner from the back, and out to the climber. The action of clipping the rope into the lower beaner of the draw seems simple, but can often be deceptively difficult. There are two basic methods for clipping the rope: forehand and backhand, also known as the thumb clip and finger clip, respectively. The forehand thumb clip method uses the thumb on the spine of the beaner to hold it in place while the rope is being pushed against the gate with the forefinger. The backhand finger clip method pins the beaner with the middle finger, using the thumb and forefinger to pinch the rope and roll it into the beaner. Spend time practicing clips in both styles with both hands while hanging just off the ground. Once the leader has reached the top anchor, he'll need to rig the rope so it will be able to run freely, without unnecessarily wearing the anchor chains. If more than one person is going to top rope the climb, the most common method for rigging the anchor is to use two quick draws clipped to the anchor bolts or chains.
Take.
Two non-locking beaners with gates reversed are the equivalent of a single locking beaner.
Down.
Make sure the belayer never takes you off belay during the transition, and use clear calls so they know when to take, give slack, or lower. The last person to climb will need to clean the draws left by the leader, then thread the rope through the anchor and lower off. Clip into the anchor by attaching both draws to the belay rappel loop on your harness.
Slack, Dave.
Then pull up some slack and clove hitch the rope to your belay rappel loop using a locking beaner. Should anything go wrong during your transition, the rope will still be attached to an integral part of your harness and you'll still be on belay. Next, untie from the end of the rope and thread it through the anchor chains. Now tie in again. Once the belayer has taken all the slack rope out of the system, unclip the clove hitch from your harness and have the belayer take.
Okay, Dave, take.
Once they've got you, you can unclip from the draws, clean them, and lower off.
Down.
On climbs that are more than one rope length, whether they be sport climbs, trad rock routes, or ice climbs, you'll often need to rappel to get down. Multi-pitch rappels are more complicated than single rope length rappels. After identifying some general principles, we'll take a look at the important considerations for both types. In rappelling, instead of the rope moving through a fixed anchor point, as in lowering, you become the moving object, sliding down a stationary rope. Rappelling is a dangerous activity in any environment since everything depends on your equipment. Even a little mistake can be fatal, so be careful, take your time, and double check everything. To help you cover all the bases when preparing to rappel, you can use the ABCD acronym. A is for anchor. Make sure it's bomb-proof. It must be able to safely handle the direction of pull and maximum load it's likely to receive. If your anchor fails, it's game over. B is for brake and backup. Make sure your braking device creates enough friction for a controlled descent. Use a backup such as a prusik when there's any chance you could lose control of the rappel for any reason. C is for control. Position your body and the rope so you will be balanced and in control on the rappel. If you don't descend in a path that is aligned directly beneath the anchor, it will feel like the rope is trying to pull you off to one side. This can cause you to swing into rock or ice features and lose control. It's also important to set up your rappels so you can easily retrieve the ropes as you descend. Stuck ropes can be a nightmare. D is for destination. Make sure your ropes reach the ground or the next rappel station, and that there is no dangerous terrain in between, such as loose rock flakes or hanging icicles. Tie knots in the end of each rappel rope when you can't visually confirm whether or not the ropes reach. Single pitch rappels get you from the top of the climb to the ground in one rope length. You only have to build or use one anchor station. On frequently climbed routes, you'll find fixed stations. This station is made up of 2 fixed pins, or pitons. When creating an anchor, select several bomber pieces of protection, then connect them using a cordelette or sling. The old cord, which connected these pins, was sun-bleached and worn, so Bruce has cut it off and is replacing it. Don't trust your life to some ratty webbing that's been hanging around since prehistory. Make sure you create a master point into which you can clip yourself and through which the rappel ropes can be threaded. The master point can be webbing, cord, or a quick link and should be aligned for the expected direction of pull. There are 2 basic methods to create a master point. Both methods can be used to build belay anchors as well as rappel anchors. The first method is the tied-off figure 8.
I'm now going to tie off a sling with the figure 8.
It works well when the direction of pull will not change. It also creates a double-stranded loop, an essential factor when using 7mm cordelette. When belaying, clip the pro rather than threading it.
I'm done.
The second method is the sliding X with stopper knots. The sliding X allows for some change in the direction of pull. Clip one end of the sling into your pro, then estimate where the master point will be. Tie one overhand knot on either side of the master point. Finally, give one strand of the lower loop a half twist. For rappelling, either thread the rappel rope straight through the master point in the webbing or attach a quick link. For belay anchors, attach a locking beaner. The stopper knots are important because they help limit shock loading. A metal quick link can be added to the master point if the rappel anchor is going to be used more than 2 or 3 times. Metal provides a strong, heat-resistant attachment point for the rappel ropes. As the ropes are pulled through the master point, friction generates heat, enough heat to melt and weaken a master point made of accessory cord or webbing. If you want to make your rappel anchor permanent, use chain and quick links to connect pro, as you saw in the sport climbing section. Thread the larger diameter rope through the quick link and tie the rope ends together using a flat figure 8. Leave at least 20 centimeters or 8 inches of tail sticking out of the knot. This knot rolls more easily over edges than a double fisherman's, gets snagged less often, and is much easier to untie after it's been weighted. If you're not sure the ropes reach the ground, tie a separate overhand knot in each end so you can't accidentally wrap off. Once the ropes are down, thread your rappel device and put your prusik on. Use a prusik if there is a chance of getting hit on the descent or of losing control for any other reason. Take your time with this vital job. When using a prusik as a safety backup, you can install it above or below your rappel device. If used below your rappel device, your prusik will only need 2 wraps and can be tied or clipped to one of your leg loops. Before you take off, double check everything by touching it. Also identify which rope to pull for retrieval purposes. Take your time getting over the edge, stay balanced and in control. Here are 2 simple ways to remember which end to pull when retrieving the ropes. The first method is simply to remember the color of the rope you need to pull. In this case, you'd remember to pull purple. The second method is to clip a quick draw from your belay rappel loop to the pulling rope before you begin the rappel. The draw will slide down the rope as you descend. When you reach the ground, pull the rope around which the quick draw is clipped. Don't forget to give your ropes a test pull. When both you and your partner are on the ground, you can retrieve the ropes. Make sure to pull the correct rope, since pulling the wrong rope will jam the knot into the master point.
All right.
Oh, look at this safety tip here. This is one thing you ought not ever do. Never clip your equipment like this because it just pops out. See that? Always clip all the way through. Whoops.
Multi-pitch rappels, especially free-hanging ones like this, can be complicated and committing. When you reach your midway anchor, tie off your rappel device so you're free to use both hands. Here, both 3 leg wraps and a prusik are being used. In this situation, Bruce has used a cordelette tied off with a figure 8 to create the master point. In a fixed anchor like this one, you could thread the rappel ropes directly through the quick links on the anchor bolts. Once the master point is established, clip in and weight the anchor. Make sure to use a locking beaner. If there's any question about the anchor's quality, jump up and down on it to test it while you're still attached to the rappel rope from above. Once you've clipped in, disconnect from the rappel ropes and take apart your rappel system one piece at a time. To prevent dropping any item, clip each to your harness as you finish taking it apart. Let your partner know as soon as you're off rappel.
Secure!
Because this rappel is overhung, Bruce is using a quick draw to keep the ropes from swinging out of reach. While your partner is on their way down, pull up the end of one of your ropes, whichever one you'll be pulling to retrieve the ropes, and thread it through the master point. Threading this rope now saves time and makes logistics at awkward stations like this one much easier. Plan a place for your partner to clip in. In this case, Dave is clipping to the shelf just above the master point to alleviate congestion. Once your partner is secure and has disassembled the rappel setup, you can retrieve your ropes. One person can pull the rope while the other person feeds its end through the master point in preparation for the next rappel. Generally speaking, people depart the station in the reverse order of which they arrived. Thread your rappel device and set up your prusik. At a free-hanging station like this one, it can be difficult to unclip your cow's tail since all of your body weight is hanging on it. Though you can unclip on your own, teamwork can make things much easier. Have your partner pull up with their arms or step up on a hold while you unclip their locking beaner. Once unclipped, they can head down. When your partner is off rappel, you'll need to repeat the same steps. It will be a bit tougher unclipping your cow's tail from the anchor by yourself, so take some time to plan it out. Remember, only rappel when you have to. A walk-off that appears longer often takes less time than rappelling, and in almost all cases is likely to be much less dangerous. When you start placing your own protection on lead, you've crossed into the world of trad climbing. The rope safety systems in trad climbing are very similar to those in sport climbing, but with a few important differences. Most significantly, you'll need to place your own protection and anchors. You need to be confident that your gear placements will hold lead falls and provide secure belay anchors. You'll need pro that fits the cracks and features of the particular route you've chosen. Take a variety of sizes and types of gear. Make sure your rack is organized and pieces are easy to reach. Finding placements in which to put pro and getting it in is a skill that takes time to develop. You don't want to be hanging out in strenuous spots trying to figure out what piece will fit in a given crack or fiddling around to get the piece off your gear sling. The orientation of draws and beaners when clipping pro is the same as when clipping draws for sport climbing. In addition to placing protection, multi-pitch or multi-rope length trad routes also require more in the way of route finding ability, rope management, and awareness of objective hazards such as loose rock or incoming weather. Approaches may be longer than those to sport climbs, sometimes resembling a combination of backpacking and climbing. If you're able to kick back and smell the flowers, the approach can be fun in its own right, as well as providing a great means to warm up your muscles for the climb and scope out the big picture. Taking in the big picture means making a mental map of the route from a distance so you can see how all the individual pitches fit together. Get a topo, a detailed route drawing from a guidebook or other source. As you approach, look for landmarks like roofs, corners, ledges, trees, different colored rock, or unique features. Match these with the topo to form a more detailed picture of the route. Also keep an eye out for likely hazards, like loose blocks or debris-stacked ledges. Once you're on the climb, these features will serve as guides to keep you en route by helping you determine your relative position to the wall. Once you reach the base of the crag, find a safe and comfortable place to lay out your gear. Organization is one of the most important aspects of multi-pitch climbing.
First aid kit's here, we can leave that in case.
This includes leaving early enough to finish the route and descend before dark, having the proper gear, taking enough food and water, and making sure you're properly dressed for the occasion. It also means being familiar with your gear, so you're free to think about climbing, rather than how to put on your harness.
What the hey, Homer?
Helmets are a mandatory item for many multi-pitch routes, especially when you're climbing on rock types such as Rockies limestone that are notoriously loose and unpredictable. Because of the range of protection you may need on a multi-pitch trad route, it's important to have a system that helps you get the gear you need fast, without fumbling or fidgeting. Dave has arranged his Pro, nuts and cams on a separate gear sling. Most people arrange gear from small in front to large at the back. He clips his draw on the racking loops on both sides of his harness. Watch others, experiment, and find a system that works well for you. Shoulder-length slings can be shortened to quick draw length so they stay out of the way but are still easy to extend when needed.
Dave, I'm just going to anchor down here because you're a fair bit heavier than I am.
When belaying, you should make a conscious decision whether to anchor or remain unanchored. Your choice depends on a number of factors, including weight difference between the belayer and climber, how dynamic you want the belay to be, and whether the belayer needs to move around to avoid falling objects. If the belayer is 50% lighter than the climber, it's a good idea to anchor them to the ground. Leaving the belayer unanchored allows them to be pulled off the ground when holding a fall. This absorbs energy and minimizes the impact force on climber, belayer, and gear. Make sure the belayer is ready to respond and won't be pulled off balance or into anything dangerous like an overhang. Sometimes it's safer to allow the belayer to move around so they can manage the rope and keep it out of the leader's way. In some cases, the belayer may also need to dodge falling rocks. Another organizational necessity is making sure the rope feeds out smoothly. If you don't flake out the rope, it will almost certainly snarl itself into a mass of malicious tangles just as the leader is coming to grips with the crux. Make sure you leave both ends out so you can easily find them to tie into. It makes good sense for the leader to place gear just above the belay. When near the ground, Pro will keep the leader from decking. Cams are oftentimes good pieces to place first, since they have some ability to rotate and adjust to the direction of pull. If there's any doubt about whether rope drag could unseat your first piece, use a long sling. Here Dave is using a shoulder-length runner to keep his first piece from being moved around by the rope as he climbs past it. When you're well above the ground, where the leader wouldn't hit anything if he fell, the first piece provides an impact buffer between the belayer and the leader. The most severe falls are those straight onto the belay with little rope paid out. An intervening piece of gear dramatically increases friction, decreases the fall factor, and reduces the impact force on the entire system. Setting up belays on multi-pitch trad routes requires the ability to set pro quickly and connect it efficiently. No one system will work in every situation, so be familiar with a variety of connection and tie-off methods. Here Dave is using a cordelette. A cordelette is simply 5 to 6 meters of 7 millimeter accessory cord, which can be used for a variety of purposes. In this situation, it's tied in a loop with a double fisherman's knot to connect the 3 pieces he has placed. Another common connection method is to use a double-length sling. Using the figure-8 tie-off is an easy way to connect all pieces to form a common master point. By clipping 2 munter beaners into the master point, Dave can attach himself to one with a figure-8 on a bite and use the other for belaying. A more adjustable method for clipping in is the clove hitch. It can be tied one-handed and can easily be adjusted without unclipping from the beaner. Once you're clipped in, let your partner know you're secure so they can take you off belay and start disassembling their belay station.
Secure! You're on! Secure!
Now pull up the rope and stack it over your tie-in point. If you're at a ledge, flick it on the ledge instead. Once the ropes go tight on your partner, put them on belay.
That you?
That's me.
Here it is again from up close. Dave is belaying using a munter hitch connected directly to the anchor's master point.
You're on belay!
This is known as a direct belay and works well for belaying the second where impact forces are low. A more common belay method is the indirect belay, which attaches the friction device to the belayer's harness. Indirect belays are better for belaying the leader because they minimize the impact force on the anchor and make it easier to feed out rope. Here Dave is setting up an indirect belay to belay a second on a winter route. Clipping the rope through the extra beaner on the anchor makes rope management easier.
That you?
It also adds friction, making it easier to hold a fall. Notice the hand motion. The rope is always in the locked off position when the brake hand is being slid up the rope. Organization at belay stances is crucial to efficiency on longer routes. Smooth changeovers between leader and second mean greater speed and less time spent exposed to hazards such as weather and darkness. Plan ahead. While belaying, you've got lots of time to think about ways to smooth the transition. Try to make things more efficient at each successive stance. Belay stations can be confusing and cluttered. Try to make your anchor as simple as possible to avoid the unnecessary chaos. Organize a stance and a clip-in point for the second. The second can clip in using a clove hitch, a figure-8 on a bite, or a cow's tail. Once secured, the belayer can take the climber off belay.
Yep.
Since the belayer has been staring up at the next pitch for some time, he may have some route ideas or encouraging words for the leader.
Okay, next pitch is yours.
Okay.
Bit ugly.
Yeah, it does look ugly. Tell you what, why don't you switch me over onto an ATC on your harness there.
If a direct belay was used, it's a good idea to change over to an indirect method, like an ATC, to belay the leader. The second now becomes the leader. Belayer and leader can work together, discussing the next pitch and re-racking gear.
You're on.
As you climb away from the stance, remember to get a piece of protection in as soon as possible to minimize forces on the belay system. The belayer should anticipate the leader's need for slack when clipping pro and should feed out rope before it's needed. There should be no resistance when the leader pulls up rope to clip gear.
Just a little loose.
In corners, It's hard to shelter the belayer, so the leader must be especially careful not to knock things down. When the rock is solid, movement is fast and secure. When it's loose, climbing can become a tedious, nerve-wracking exercise in risk management. Test suspect holds by hitting them with the heel of your hand or tapping them with your toe. Whenever possible, push in on the holds, like the stemming shown here, rather than pulling out on them. Getting gear can be the hardest part of climbing. Keeping it in place can be just as hard. Arrange your protection using slings and quick draws to minimize the chance of gear being accidentally pulled out. It's better to have even marginal gear than no gear at all. If things get too dicey, don't be afraid to call it quits and come back another day. There's a lot more to climbing than just getting to the top. Once you're down, make sure to take care of your rope and other gear. While you're coiling your rope, check it over for any damage that may have happened during the climb. Mark any damaged area with tape or a knot so you can check it over more carefully back at home. Safe up, safe down is the goal, though it's not unusual to experience a bit of whining and complaining before the day is done.
These things don't get any lighter.
Mine's not getting any more stylish either.
You said it.
Okay, Mauritia.
Most rope safety systems are designed as preventative measures, but in rare cases, prevention gives way to rescue. Basic self-reliance, being able to avoid trouble or getting yourself out of trouble that you've managed to get into, are key elements in climbing. There are many ways to use standard climbing equipment to construct effective improvised rescue systems. Knowing a few basic tools will allow you to improvise and problem solve in a variety of situations. These tools can be combined in a huge variety of ways, only a few of which we'll demonstrate here. The tools we'll look at are tying off a belay device, the releasable tied-off munter hitch, and prussiks as a means of securing or ascending the rope. Imagine a situation where your partner, who is on lead, takes a bad fall, injuring himself in the process.
You hurt, Dave?
If he's more than half a rope length out, you won't have enough rope to lower him to your belay stance.
Give me a second, I can tie you off here. Come up, give you a hand.
Okay, I'm not going anywhere.
If there is no good location within reach to which you can lower him, you'll need to ascend the rope itself to attend to him. As a partner turned rescuer, you'll need to go through several steps. Make sure you complete each one before moving on to the next. First, you must hold the fall. Then check on your partner's situation. Devise a plan. If you clearly need to get to your partner, tie off your belay device so your hands will be free to do other jobs. If possible, check with your partner to establish how good his upper piece of gear is, since it will be supporting both your weight and his as you prussic.
Just got to put a prusik on.
There are two parts to the tie-off. The first is a releasable overhand knot, and the second is an overhand on a bite, which serves as a backup to keep the releasable overhand from accidentally coming untied. Next, install two prussiks, one for your waist and one for your feet. The foot prussik can be tied using your cordelette. Don't tie the ends together or it will be harder for you to form your foot loop. Use 3 wraps to ensure the hitch will bite securely on the climbing rope. Take the ends and slightly offset one strand from the other. Now tie a figure-8 knot. This creates a loop that you'll be able to clip into your harness. Leave a bit of slack and tie another figure-8 knot, forming a second smaller loop, this one for your foot. Next, install your waist prussik. Again, use 3 wraps around the climbing rope. The cord you use to tie your waist prussik can be joined together in several ways. In this case, the ends have been tied together with a single fisherman's knot to form a closed loop. You can also use webbing slings in combination with friction hitches such as the Klemheist or Bachmann. Clip your waist prusik into the belay rappel loop on your harness using a locking beaner. Do the same with your foot prusik. Clip the larger offset loop you created into your belay rappel loop using a locking beaner. This can be the same beaner you used for your waist prusik. Now, snug up your prusiks and release your tied-off belay device. Now you can begin ascending the rope by sliding your prusiks up one at a time, alternating your weight between the two. Remember, both prusiks should be clipped to your harness so that you are securely attached to the rope. As you ascend the rope to your partner, your own weight acts as a counterbalance to his. There are a variety of strategies to increase safety if the leader's top piece is suspect. You may need to clean gear on the way up. You can use this gear for beefing up the top piece if necessary. As you near your partner, scope out the situation from up close. Clip your partner into you as soon as possible using a sling, quick draw, or cow's tail. Double check the gear you're hanging from and assess your partner's injuries. There are many ways by which to get your partner down. In this case, the decision is made to use a counterbalance rappel. It works well on steep terrain. Another likely option would be to set up a lower. Take your foot prusik off the rope and reattach it to the rope above your injured partner. For the time being, you are hanging from your waist prusik. Now connect the former foot prusik to your belay rappel loop using a releasable munter hitch. Prepare for descending by putting your rappel device on the slack rope just below your waist prusik. Once your rappel device is threaded, you'll need to shift weight off your waist prusik, then loosen it up. Otherwise, you won't be able to descend. To do this, pull yourself up on the rope. At the same time, pull a rope up through your rappel device and lock it off. Now position your partner next to you and slightly higher than yourself. Slip around between them and the rock so they are straddling your back. Make sure their position is comfortable, then begin descending. If you decide to go for help instead of ascending to assist your partner, you'll need to rig a system to secure him in your absence. Once again, you can use the releasable munter hitch, but this time tie it off to your anchor instead of your harness. You'll probably need to beef up the upward pull pieces in the anchor because your partner will be hanging from them. Once the munter is tied off, release your tied off belay device and transfer the load onto the prusik which is attached to the anchor. As an extra backup, tie a figure 8 in the climbing rope and clip it into the anchor as well. There are obviously many twists and turns which can dramatically affect what you are able to do in a given situation. The intention here is only to give you some basic tools with which to solve some common rescue problems. If all else fails, send the rescue dog for help. Not everything can be solved by improvised systems.
It's as tight as I can get it right now.
Hey Bruce, do you want this?
The rope safety systems used in ice climbing are largely the same as those used in trad or sport climbing. Climbing calls, rope management, knots, and belaying are identical. However, using rope systems with gloves or mitts can make simple tasks like clipping pro, tying in, or belaying much more challenging. It's usually easier to use bare hands or thin gloves whenever possible. Sharp crampons and ice tools are another complication not found in rock climbing. They can easily damage or destroy a rope. Accidentally plant your ice tool through the middle of your rope, and you're instantly off belay. In addition, the combination of water and below freezing temperatures can turn the rope into a stiff frozen cable. Use dry treated ropes to increase the ability of your rope to stay flexible. In addition to your rope systems, safety equipment you should have include helmets, hot fluids, extra calories to keep you warm and thinking clearly, spare gloves, and a first aid kit.
Lunch.
In ice climbing, where falling ice and sharp objects are common, a helmet is even more of an essential safety tool than on loose rock. Don't leave home without it.
Mark, you were asking about that safety gear I was carrying. I'm just carrying a cordelette, a Prusik, and then for ice I've got my Balakov wire. And then I've been carrying a couple walkers as well, and a belay device. And that seems to be all that I need for most situations, except that I've been using a cow's tail a lot too, just to clip in at the belays, and especially on the rappel when I'm not tied into the rope. And first aid kit, it's in my pack, so if we need it, that's where it's at.
Racking up is similar to rock climbing, though Ice Pro is dramatically different from rock gear.
Let's split up this gear here. Give you a couple screws. Those are pre-rigged with load limiters on them, and then some of these are just plain. I like to always have a couple screws for every one, so you're never caught without any gear. And then here's a couple of draws for you as well.
Here Mark is using a munter hitch as a friction device for belaying the leader. In the trad climbing section, you saw the munter being used directly off the anchor, but in this case, it's being used indirectly. It's clipped to Mark's harness rather than the anchor to create a more dynamic belay for the leader.
You got me on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Be careful, Bruce. I love you.
When placing screws, it's usually a good idea to make a starter hole with your tool first. Starting an ice screw can be precarious. A good starter hole and constant inward pressure will help. This screw is pre-rigged with a load limiter slid onto the tube.
Okay, Mark, clipping.
Okay, you're on belay.
All right.
Load limiters have stitching, which rips apart in a fall, absorbing impact force. Use load limiters on any rock or ice gear you think is marginal. If your screw won't go in all the way, try a shorter screw. If that won't work and the screw sticks out more than 2 inches, use a pre-rigged screw or tie it off using a clove hitch sling. Finally, if the screw sticks out less than 2 inches, clip the screw's hanger like normal. When putting in a screw or a belay on ice, try to get at least one of your feet sideways in French technique. It's hard to get good gear from a bad stance. If the surface ice is rotten, make sure to clear away until you reach good ice. The core, which poops out of the screw, is one indicator it's penetrating good ice. You also want to feel consistent resistance as you turn the screw in. Clip yourself in once you have a good screw. In the trad climbing section, Dave used a clove hitch in the climbing rope to attach himself to the anchor. In this case, Bruce has chosen to use his cow's tail. Either method will work.
Okay, Mark, I'm secure.
Put your second screw below and just offset from your first screw. This will minimize the angle of the sling connecting the two screws and decrease the vector forces on them as a result. This anchor is being set up in series, meaning the pieces will be connected in line with one another and the direction of pull. In contrast, the trad climbing anchor you saw earlier had pieces of pro offset or side by side to one another. A second difference between the two anchors is that in this one, Bruce has chosen to clip himself into the upper screw to minimize congestion at the master point. Clip a free beaner into the upper screw. attach a sling. Next, clove hitch the sling to the lower screw and adjust the tension so the load is adjusted evenly between both screws. Use a locking beener on the lower screw if at all possible. Finally, create a master point using a double loop figure 8. Bruce has chosen to set up a direct belay using a munter hitch, so a munter beener clips into the master point.
Okay.
Pull up the slack rope until you get to the climber. It's much faster than pulling all the slack through the belay device. Stack the rope over your cow's tail so it's out of the way. If you're on a ledge, you can stack it off to the side where it won't get stepped on.
That's me. Okay, just a second, I'll get you on. Okay. Mark, you're on belay. Climb when ready. Climbing. Climb.
This is the way we unscrew the screw. Windy wind.
You're such a cheery fellow.
If Mark runs into trouble or needs to rest, Bruce can tie him off on the anchor using the releasable munter.
Oh,
You getting pumped?
I'm getting really pumped.
Oh man, that didn't sound good.
Oh. Oh,
I can hold you.
I might have to get you to fake here.
Okay, gotcha.
You sure?
Yep,
Sure?
gotcha.
You sure?
Yep.
In the improvised rescue section, you saw the same tie-off used to secure a prusik to the anchor as part of the counterbalance rescue. Now, however, the releasable munter is being tied with the climbing rope instead of a cordelette, and the hitch is in a different orientation to the belayer. This different perspective can make the munter look new and can sometimes be disorienting.
Okay, Mark, you're tied off. Just let me know when you're ready to climb again.
Okay.
Here's a quick recap of what it looked like when being tied with the cordelette. Practice this and all knots in a variety of orientations so you can tie them proficiently no matter what the circumstances.
Feeling a lot better, Bruce. Think I'm ready to climb again. You put me back on belay.
Yeah, you bet. Let me just untie you here, Mark. I'll give you a holler when I'm ready to have you climb again.
Okay.
You just feel a little bump. Okay. All right. You're on. Climb when ready.
As in trad climbing, station organization is key. As the climber reaches the belay, make sure they have a place to secure themselves.
You're right up next to me here, Mark. You can clip into this hard point with your cow's tail.
Once the second is secure, you can turn your attention to getting down.
Okay. Take you off belay then.
Thanks.
Yeah, good work. Let's stick our Balakov right in here. I'll stick one in on this side and then we can punch another hole through from over there.
The Abalakov, also called a V-thread, is a natural ice anchor created by using two intersecting screw holes. Abalakovs are stronger than ice screws in most situations and far less prone to melt out by solar radiation. Select the best ice you can find and insert a 22 centimeter screw. The screw should be at an approximate angle of 60 degrees to the surface ice. Feel for consistent resistance as you turn the screw in. Choose another location if the screw begins to spin effortlessly. This indicates weak air pockets within the ice. Once fully inserted, back the screw out.
That one. I'm just going to mark this hole with this one so we can line it up. That long screw is a better one to put the Balakov in with because it got way deeper penetration. Give us more ice. Okay,
There you go, sir.
let's measure this. We'll go about one screw length over, about level. Put this right in here. Get a starter hole going for this puppy.
Making a starter hole helps the screw bite more easily at first. This fact lets you fine-tune the screw angle as you begin to insert it, and increases the likelihood of intersecting the first screw hole. Line up the two screws when both are partially inserted. Look at them from above and from the side to double check the angle. Take your time lining up the screw holes and you'll be successful on your first attempt 9 times out of 10. Once the second screw is started, take out the first one and look down the empty hole. Watch for the teeth of the second screw to punch through. You'll also feel the screw get much easier to turn.
Oh, there it is. I can see it just punched through.
Take out the second screw and you're ready to thread the Abalakoff using an Abalakoff wire or a sharpened bent piece of coat
Get
hanger.
this hole cleared out. Okay, that should do it. Once you thread that cord down through. Okay. Okay, I can see it. I'll just hook
Use 7mm accessory cord or larger for the anchor sling. Tie the ends together using a double fisherman's knot and you've got an anchor. You can also use small diameter webbing to thread an Abalakoff, though it can be a bit more fiddly to get through the holes. Feed one rappel rope through the sling and tie the ends of both ropes together.
tie them together with a flat figure 8.
Remember to leave at least 20 centimeters or 8 inches of tail sticking out of the knot. As mentioned before, this knot pulls over edges much more easily than a double fisherman's and gets jammed far less often. Also identify which color rope to pull in order to retrieve your ropes.
Okay, so we're going to be pulling on purple. Okay?
When conditions are funky, it's a good idea to rappel with a prusik backup. Prusiks can be installed above the rappel device or below, as you saw in the rappelling section. Here's a 2-wrap prusik being used below the rappel device.
Double check everything.
Good thing I caught that.
When setting up your rappel, make sure you are completely attached to the rappel system before unclipping from your anchor. Thread one component at a time to avoid dropping equipment. Use locking beaners to attach yourself to the rappel system. One beaner for your rappel device and another for your prusik. This is a 3-wrap prusik going on above the rappel device. It's tied using a loop of accessory cord joined together with a double fisherman's knot. In order to get adequate friction from your prusik, make sure to use 3 wraps and ensure that your prusik cord is 2 millimeters smaller in diameter than the rope you are tying it around. For example, this is a 7 millimeter cord used on 9 millimeter ropes.
Okay. Pick out this last screw and head home.
Have a ritual for double checking everything before you set off. For instance, squeezing your beaners and physically touching your knots, harness buckle, and rappel device. When you're satisfied, unclip and head down. Retrieving the rope may be simple, or it may be complicated by the rope freezing to the ice, the knot getting stuck, pulling the wrong rope, or a number of other circumstances. If the first person test pulls the ropes from the bottom, the top climber should be able to solve most problems while they're still relatively simple. Waterfall ice isn't the only ice environment. Glacier travel and crevasse rescue are perhaps the most demanding application of rope safety systems, and it is to this environment that we turn next. Glaciers are unique and intriguing geographical features. Masses of snow and ice sliding downhill under the pull of gravity. They usually move slowly, creeping along at several inches a year. In certain areas of the glacier, ice may move much more quickly, cracking and collapsing when the speed of movement exceeds the ice's ability to bend and flow.
Well, I'm glad I wasn't standing there.
In situations like this, a rope is useless, since the greatest danger is getting crushed, not falling into a slot. Crevasses are the result of movement. Ice stretches and cracks as it bends around corners, drops over steep terrain, or encounters drag from adjacent rock walls. Staying out of crevasses depends largely on your ability to read the glacier, to know where crevasses most commonly form, and ways to detect or avoid them. Equally important is knowing methods for rescuing yourself or others should someone fall in. In this segment, we'll look at roping up for glacier travel, setting anchors, constructing mechanical advantage systems for hauling, and a self-rescue technique using prussiks.
You know what? They're not Swiss guys, they're cute.
Girl guides.
Oh my god, oh my
They're
god.
Girl Guides.
Oh my god, this guy.
Not everyone belongs on a glacier. Before you venture out, make sure you have the proper equipment, education, and experience. A bit of common sense also helps, enough to know that ice is slippery, so you'll recognize that walking around in your street shoes, like these folks, could be hazardous to your health. When the glacier's surface is exposed ice with no snow covering, as in this case, it's referred to as a dry glacier. On a dry glacier, you'll be able to see all the crevasses and simply avoid them, so in most cases, you won't need to rope up. When snow cover hides a good portion of the crevasses, it is referred to as a wet glacier. On a wet glacier, it's a wise idea to rope up, since deep slots may be hidden or bridged by snow, which looks solid, but isn't. When setting up the rope for glacier travel, divide it into equal thirds. This will give you 4 separate tie-in points. This same configuration can be easily adapted for 4, 3, or 2 climbers. To divide the rope into equal thirds, uncoil it and have 2 people grab opposite ends. You can simply hold on to the end, or you can clip it into your harness. Next, grab a bight of rope from near the other person's end. Clip this into a beaner on your harness. Now walk in opposite directions from one another. When the rope goes tight, you've got perfect thirds. Mark the mid-rope tie-in points by tying a butterfly knot at each one. Then unclip from the ends and restack the rope, ready for tying in. As you lay out the rope, be sure the tie-in points are easily visible and that they are separated enough to keep people from bumping into one another as they install their prussiks. Set the knots uphill from the coils so the rope doesn't slide under people's cramponed feet as they tie in. People on the rope ends should tie the rope directly to their harness just like normal. Any extra rope can be either coiled up around head and shoulder or speed coiled and stowed away in the pack. Those climbers in the middle of the rope can clip in using a locking beaner and a knot such as the butterfly. Once the rope is attached to your harness, install your prussiks. Having your prussiks on the rope beforehand means you won't have to install them while hanging in a crevasse if you happen to fall in. It will also greatly simplify the rescue process if it's your partner who takes the plunge rather than you. Set up your waist prussik so it is clipped to your harness belay rappel loop. Daisy chain the loose ends of your foot prussik so they stay out of the way and are easy to undo. Clip them off to one of your gear loops, making sure there's no tension on them when you pull on the rope. If there is, it's likely you'll rip your gear loop off, sending all your gear down the gullet of a crevasse. Once the team is ready, set off one at a time, keeping the rope snug between members and traveling perpendicular to the prevailing crevasse pattern. Too much slack is dangerous for several reasons. Excess slack translates into a longer fall distance and a greater chance of hitting obstructions inside the crevasse. Excess slack also increases the shock load on the person holding the fall. Most crevasse falls are short, with people rarely going in past their waist, but long falls do happen. The first priority of the team members left on the surface is to stop the fall, typically using self-arrest.
Okay, give me the weight.
The end person can hold the weight while the person closest to the crevasse establishes the initial anchor. These roles can be switched if the situation dictates.
Feeling okay? Okay. I'm gonna get in a T-slot here.
Unclipping from the butterfly knot but staying connected to your waist prusik allows more freedom to move around while placing the initial anchor.
Let me know if you have any problems. Okay, Dave. Just gonna dump my pack here. Okay, hang on.
You want to check on the person in the hole as soon as possible, but not at the expense of falling in yourself. This snow anchor is called a T-slot. Clove hitch a sling or cordelette around the axe. You can substitute skis or a pack if you're short of axes or if the snow is unconsolidated. Make sure your trench is perpendicular to the direction of pull or the anchor will be prone to failure. To increase its holding power, insert the axe picked down, then pack snow in tightly above and around the axe. Let it set up a bit before loading it. Tie off the sling from the initial anchor using some sort of multi-loop knot, such as a triple loop bowline or double loop figure 8. This is most important if you're using a cordelette because of its smaller diameter. As you build your rescue system, start with the simplest solution you can think of, and only move on to more complex solutions when they are clearly needed. Simpler is usually faster and safer. In many cases, a person who has fallen into a hole can either walk out or climb out with a belay from above. To get the weight off your partner, you'll need to transfer the load to the initial anchor. Do this by connecting your foot prusiks to the anchor using a releasable munter hitch.
Okay, Dave, back off slowly.
Okay. You gonna take?
Keep coming. Okay, is that everything?
That's it. You got her all.
Good. Okay, we're set. Slide your prusiks and come on down. Dave, can you hand me that orange sling? Dave, I'm going to go down and check on her. Just make sure she's okay.
Okay, you know what, Bruce? There's nothing above our heads here. I'm taking my helmet off. It's pretty hot. I'm gonna drop my pack too.
Okay, I think we're close. Sheila, are you okay?
Yes, I'm okay.
Can you prusik out?
Yeah, I can press it.
Had the lip there?
Yeah.
If you can't walk or climb out of a crevasse, the next simplest option is to prusik out. Unclip your foot prusiks from your harness, tie a foot loop, and begin ascending. For added security, attach the foot prusiks to your harness using the same method you saw in the improvised rescue section. It's best to have your pack hauled up separately if you have one. Try to maximize the fetch, the distance you move up with each reset of your prusiks. Sheila could improve the fetch on this system by tying a shorter step in the foot loop, allowing her to stand higher with each reset of her prusiks. The lip is often the trickiest part of prusiking, so make sure someone is there to help. If you have a light person in the crevasse, or more than 2 people on the surface, the simplest way to haul someone out of a slot is the tractor pull. Obviously, Sheila, who is the victim in the crevasse, can't also be on top helping with her own rescue, so a tractor pull won't work in this situation. So, back in the slot she goes.
Damn.
Sheila, you okay?
I'm okay.
Can you prusik out?
No.
Okay, we'll set up a rescue anchor. Then we'll drop you the end of the rope, slip it into your harness with the walker, and we'll pull you up.
All right.
Okay, hang in there.
The next step up the complexity ladder is the 3-to-1 system, also called the Z-drag.
Boat here looks good, eh?
That looks great.
It creates a mechanical advantage, giving you more pulling power for raising. To set up the 3-to-1, you're best off to establish a second independent system, the rescue anchor. When creating the T-slot, first dig the main slot, then dig a second trench for the anchor sling. Make this deep enough to prevent an upward pull on the axe when the sling is loaded. Also be sure to offset the head of the axe to allow for its greater surface area. In icy conditions, or with shallow or rotten snow, you may need to dig down to harder ice and sink a screw instead of using a T-slot.
Sheila, we got the rescue anchor built. I'm going to send the end down to you. Okay, here comes the end. Clip it into your locking beaner and give us a holler.
Sit. Stop.
Okay, I'm just going to pad the lip here, Sheila.
Padding the lip dramatically decreases the friction you'll experience when hauling. Pad the edge before you start hauling, or the rope will cut deeply into the lip. Anchor your padding material, whether it's an axe, a pack, or a stuff sack, so it won't drop into the slot if the crevasse lip collapses.
Let us know when you can pull up.
Ready to pull up.
Okay.
Using a doubled cordelette allows you to make the anchor releasable, so you can detension the system if necessary, even when it's under load. When using a cordelette, create the master point using a multi-loop knot such as a double loop figure 8. Most importantly, tie the cordelette off to the master point using a releasable munter hitch. As a backup for the releasable munter, you can thread the tails of the cordelette through the loop created by the releasable overhand. However, the most secure backup is to use an overhand on a bite, as you saw in the improvised rescue section.
Gardas? For the Garda.
There's the rescue rope.
Pull up all the slack until the rescue rope goes tight on the person in the hole. Clip the rescue rope into the anchor using a Garda or another ratchet device. Whatever you use, check to make sure it feeds and locks as intended. Next, install the running prusik and pulley onto the rescue rope. Using a pulley rather than a carabiner significantly increases pulling efficiency, no matter where in the system you install it.
Okay, Dave. Right. Let's just make sure everything's looking good. Flip this. Okay, I'm going to set the prusik out to the lip and we'll start hauling. Okay, Sheila, I'm going to bring you up.
The Garda creates a lot of friction and can easily distort. Here are a few tips. The Garda should always be built using two same-shaped beaners. To prevent the beaners from shifting and being improperly loaded, keep the Garda under constant tension. And clip the Garda beaners to a soft link, like a sling, rather than to a solid link, like a locking carabiner. With any ratchet, it helps if you clear away snow so the whole affair can rotate freely. While you're hauling on the rescue anchor, remember to take up the slack that is building up on the initial anchor. This acts as an independent backup system.
Dave, I'm going to reset the prusik, so give me a bit of slack here.
Okay.
Occasionally, you'll need to reset the running prusik pulley.
Okay,
Here the haul.
just about.
Make sure to stay in contact with the person as they are raised, in case they get stuck or run into obstructions within the crevasse.
Okay, here she comes. Slow. Okay, doing okay there?
Unlike this lip,
Okay.
most crevasse edges are snow covered, and the rope cuts in even if it has been padded. You'll definitely want to station someone at the lip to aid in the struggle. There are many alternative ratchets which can be used in place of the Garda. Each has its own advantages and disadvantages. Here are two alternatives. The auto block requires a pulley and a short prusik as key components, equipment you'll already be carrying. Because it incorporates a pulley at the turnaround point, the auto block is one of the most efficient ratchet devices you can choose. Unlike the Garda, it doesn't have to be clipped to a soft link. On the downside, it allows a bit more rope to feed out before the prusik locks up, and occasionally the prusik can become jammed with snow. Prusik minding pulleys are a variation on this theme. Using a specially shaped pulley, they allow you to set up the same system without using a belay device. The plaquette ratchet is essentially the same setup as the Garda, but substitutes a specialized belay plate for the dual beaners. It eliminates the distortion problem of the Garda, but still creates high friction. It also requires you to carry an additional, specialized piece of gear. With any ratchet, it's a good idea to clear the snow away, so you can clearly see it at work, and so snow doesn't jam or plug its workings. In situations where you need maximum pulling power, you can use the 6-to-1, also called the drop loop system.
Okay, that's good.
The initial anchor, foot prusik tie-off, and placing the rescue anchor are the same as for the Z-drag system.
Okay, Dave. Back off slowly.
Three differences are important. Because the drop loop uses more rope than the Z-drag,
Coming?
the rescue anchor is placed closer to the crevasse, about 4 meters or 15 feet away. The ratchet is attached to the anchor differently than with the 3-to-1. And the drop loop uses the free end of the rope on the surface rather than sending it down to the victim.
Okay, it's flipped.
Let's back up and have a look at it from the start. Begin with the end in mind, the end of the rope, that is. Take the free end of the rope and tie it off directly to the T-slot anchor sling using a releasable munter hitch.
Okay, I'll take the drop loop down to her. You can feed me some slack.
Yep.
I'm gonna lower a loop down to you, Sheila. Let me know when it gets to you.
Okay. Okay. I got it.
Flip it into the pulley on your harness.
Okay.
Make sure the ropes aren't crossed.
Okay, it's flipped.
Okay, Dave.
Add an extender sling so the rope running through the Garda or other ratchet doesn't rub against the rope in the tied-off munter. Remember, your releasability in this system is built into the end of the drop loop, not into the master point itself. There are 2 strands to the drop loop. The stationary line goes from the anchor down to the victim, then through the victim's pulley, and comes back up as the rescue rope. Make sure you attach the running prusik and pulley to the rescue rope, or your system won't work properly.
Okay, I'm gonna take this down to the lip. We're gonna start hauling you up. Let us know if you run into any obstructions or we need to stop.
Okay.
Practice these systems regularly. before you need them. Your partner doesn't want to hang around in a cold crevasse while you try and recall some dim, jumbled memory.
Reset there, pull the other anchor.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna reset, Dave. Feed me some slack.
Get ready to haul
Okay.
it again.
No matter what system you choose, there are several basic steps to most crevasse rescues.
Okay, here she comes. Slow.
Right.
How you doing there?
Okay.
We'll go slow.
Here are the steps in review. Stop the fall. Tie off the victim by attaching your foot prusik to the initial anchor. Check on the victim. Choose the simplest solution possible. Walk or climb out, prusik, haul. Keep your work area neat and organized. If you need a mechanical advantage system, establish a separate rescue anchor. Use the initial anchor as a backup. Make sure your system is releasable. Help the person at the lip. Throughout the various environments and activities in this video, we've shown you a small number of tools applied in a wide variety of ways. Tools such as the releasable munter hitch, prusiks, pulleys, the cordelette, various belay devices, and the climbing rope. Though there are endless climbing scenarios that might require the use of roped safety systems, most situations can be either avoided or addressed using these simple tools. It was Albert Einstein who said, "Imagination is more important than knowledge." With a basic knowledge of the skills we've demonstrated, some practice, and a healthy dose of imagination, you should be able to increase both your competence and confidence in the use of roped safety systems.